is audio tape number 3 in the Overcoming Social Anxiety Step-by-Step series. This week we will continue to work on cognitive, thought-changing methods, and we will introduce a relaxation strategy that with time we will be able to use away from home even when we're in public social situations. But first, just as we do in our regular weekly sessions, we need to check on the progress you made last week as you were learning and practicing the cognitive handouts. Remember, every time you practice, even if it's just for a few minutes, you are sinking these new strategies into your brain further and further, which always moves you one step closer towards overcoming social anxiety. If you practiced the slow talk technique last week when you were by yourself, and you practiced it out loud so that the technique can have its most powerful effect, then you are on your way to having this general slowing down concept learned. You might have found there is relaxation in this slowing down process, and if this hasn't been apparent to you yet, keep on practicing the technique, and it will begin to happen for you fairly soon. We want to keep on using slow talk, and in fact we will keep using it every week as we learn a new method, strategy, or technique. Slow talk helps to get the cognitive therapy into our brain more efficiently and strongly. It's easier for our brain to remember these methods and strategies if we are calm and relaxed as we do them. This is yet another reason to keep using your slow talk. It will continue to prove its usefulness in practical real-life situations as the weeks go by. If you are feeling comfortable now about using the slow talk technique, we want to move it out of your quiet time at home and into real-life, everyday use. Thus, when you feel comfortable with it, try to use it in a situation that does not have much anxiety associated with it. This may be done in a dozen different ways. For example, some people find it easier to start using slow talk with a stranger over the telephone. Others start using slow talk with a friend, a family member, or a relative. Still others find it's easier to begin using slow talk in a school or work environment. Because slow talk is simply a slight slowing down of your rhythm of speech, no one else is going to notice you're using it, unless you tell them first. The idea is to choose a situation that is comfortable for you, not an anxiety situation, and continue to practice slow talk while you are conversing with another person in your everyday life. As you become more comfortable with using slow talk, we will eventually keep moving it up gradually so that it can be used in practical, everyday situations where you do feel some anxiety. Slow talk has been shown to cut social anxiety significantly, so this is one strong method that we definitely need to have in our arsenal of options. If you have learned the technique already, or are definitely on your way toward doing it, give yourself some credit right now. When slow talk becomes automatic, and you can shift over into it any time you want, you will have one powerful, strong method permanently learned to control your social anxiety in any situation in which you find yourself. Last week we also worked on the handout, Rational Coping Strategies for Anxiety. Please make sure you have identified 3 or 4 coping statements that you can repeat, reinforce, and use to encourage yourself. Just like everything else, we want these coping statements, short as they are, to find a permanent home inside your mind. So keep looking over and repeating the rational coping statements you have chosen during this next week. Let's make really sure you have these rational statements down deep in your brain so that they will resurface at any time of the day or night you may need them. The statements that you get permanently down into your brain are not miracle cures, but they will serve as another dent that we put in the vicious cycle of social anxiety. The final method we talked about last week was our negative thought stoppage procedure, in which we learn to stop our automatic negative thinking, or ants as we're going to call them. Negative thought stoppage is one of the most important strategies we use in overcoming social anxiety. So let's talk about last week's results and review them before we go on to explain a new method of thought stoppage later on in this tape. In the initial thought stoppage technique that you worked on last week, the first step was to notice and then catch yourself when you were having automatic negative thoughts or ants. Keep in mind that these automatic negative thoughts are truly automatic. You never chose them, and they are definitely negative. They are thoughts that we do not like or want to have because they cause us anxiety, fear, depression, and fatigue, among other negative emotions. So in beginning to control our automatic negative thinking, we notice and catch those thoughts that we know are negative and irrational. And then we make a statement to ourselves as a reminder that we do not want to continue having these negative, irrational thoughts. Finally, we find a distraction that will take the attention away from the automatic negative thinking for a while. Hopefully, over the course of the last week, you were able to catch yourself several times, make a rational and reasonable statement to yourself, and then find several distractions that worked for you to keep your mind away from the automatic negative thinking. If you had some difficulties with this technique, especially at first, don't worry about it. Everyone has some problems using negative thought stoppage, especially in the first week. That is why I said last week that if you caught yourself having automatic negative thoughts several times during the week, that fact alone is positive. Catching our automatic negative thoughts, which have swirled around unchecked in our heads for many years, is never an easy task. We are breaking a long-held, entrenched habit, and habits don't break easily. If you caught this ant's thinking several times during the past week, and you were able to make a rational and reasonable statement, and then moved into a distraction, this is great. The distractions temporarily help to get your mind off automatic negative thinking. While we are working with the cognitive therapy, and the thought-stopping activities in particular, progress may seem slow. But if you keep persisting and don't give up, you will get to the place where you're better able to notice these automatic negative thoughts, and then you'll be able to dismiss them or ignore them without having to use distractions. This will come in time as long as you are persistent and don't give up. Changing your thinking habits can take a little time, but it is important we do it in a way that will permanently give you the methods and strategies to control anxiety. If you have this general thought stoppage process down, please remember that we still want to keep using this general method as the weeks go by. We want to be able to catch our negative thinking first, because if we can't catch it, then we can't do anything about it. Then we want to rationally reject the ants and find a distraction that directly works for you and keeps your mind away from automatic negative thinking. Now, we are ready to move on to our second thought stoppage method. In fact, this method is more than just a negative thought stoppage technique. This method is going to allow us to replace some of our automatic negative thinking with more rational thoughts. So we still will be working on stopping the automatic negative thinking, but we will also start heading toward replacing the automatic negative thinking with more rational and realistic thoughts. So this next thought stoppage technique is going to strengthen the first one you've already done. The automatic negative thinking that we have been experiencing for years is actually what helps keep the vicious cycle of anxiety and depression going. So in order to stop it, we are going to use another thought stoppage method, which is in the form of a story or a narrative. This narrative is one that we want you to read over to yourself every single day from here on out. This thought stoppage strategy is called the ants handout because it is going to make it very clear and very real to you that your automatic negative thinking is unhealthy, unhelpful, and is preventing you from getting any better. The ants narrative is going to reach out and grab you as long as you keep reading it over. By continuing to read it over and over, your automatic negative thinking will become clearer and clearer to you, and then you can do something about it. Because automatic negative thinking is so very ingrained and conditioned in our brains, we are going to use this new narrative to drive home the point to our mind that our automatic negative thinking is very detrimental to us, is unhealthy for us, and is unhelpful to us in overcoming our social anxiety. The ants narrative will single out your automatic negative thinking habits for extinction and removal. After you've read this handout over every day for the next few weeks, your mind will start catching your automatic negative thinking more quickly, and then you can put that final dagger through the heart of this old thinking pattern. The more you realize you're having automatic negative thinking, the more you can change things and do something about it. We have found the ants handout to be very powerful because it is strongly worded, and it is one of the quicker ways to help people recognize their automatic negative thinking behavior and the accompanying irrational thoughts. The more you recognize these thoughts, and the quicker you learn to control them, the less your thinking can go negative on you. As I mentioned, you will find the ants narrative to be strongly worded. It is written that way deliberately, so that our mind is forced to sit up and take notice. Remember, we are talking to or refuting our ants, so we want to be as truthful and as rational about them as we can. The second half of the ants handout deals specifically with how we can eliminate our automatic negative thoughts. But it is important that you read this handout to yourself every day in slow talk, at least once, for this process to begin occurring. Because of the ants handout's importance, I am going to read this narrative to you in slow talk on tape. This way, you will receive double reinforcement.